And welcome into another episode of the Young Dad Podcast. Whether you're outside grilling, maybe you're mowing the lawn, maybe you're changing dirty diapers, or maybe you saw this episode, you're like, I gotta sit down, relax, I really need to listen to that one. So I'm super excited to have you. I'm your host, Jay, and I have a very special guest joining me today. I have attorney Perdita Jafari, who is a highly respected family law attorney with extensive experience in handling complex cases. She graduated from Southwestern University School of Law and holds a Bachelor of Arts in Communication, studies with a minor in psychology from Loyola Marymount University, where she was on the Dean's Academic Honor List. During her time in law school, Jafari served as an judicial extem for the Honorable Michael D. Rutberg and clerk for the LA District Attorney's Office in the special unit handling child rape and molestation cases. She has been an adjunct professor at NYU Schack Institute of Real Estate in the Southern California School of Law, teaching courses in real estate law, family law, and community property. Her professional affiliations are numerous, including membership in the Iranian American Lawyers Association, where she served as vice president, the American Bar Association, the LA County Bar Association, and the International Academy of Collaborative Lawyers. In today's episode, we're going to dive into important and often overlooked topics such as family law, issues affecting men, domestic violence, and narcissistic abuse towards men, and the challenges of navigating the divorce process. I'll also be sharing, of course, some of my own experiences with these topics as well as with narcissistic abuse, divorce, and both personally and as a mental health clinician of what I've seen. So we're going to get a lot of different perspectives today to hopefully offer you guys some hope who are listening and guidance as well to those who maybe are in these same situations and may not know that they're in these situations. So I'm really, really excited. So without further ado, we're going to jump right in. Let's welcome attorney Perdita Jafari to the show. Perdita, welcome to the show. Welcome to the Young Dad Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jay. This is, I know we've been following each other on social media for some time. I think I met you through Threads, which is a new social media platform. Really, Threads is the only social media that the law firm has that I personally will comment. And so I really was enjoying the things that you were doing with young dads. So I'm so glad that we are able to do this finally.
Me too. And if you're watching on YouTube, yes, I just spilled my drink all over my shirt. So that did just happen while Perdita was talking there. So we're human. We're human. Things happen. But, you know, I love what you post on Threads. I love your engagement on Threads. I'm kind of at the opposite place of Threads to where I'm kind of pulling back from Threads. And I'm not really sure what direction I'm going to go with social media right now. I'm just trying to find the platform, find the right people, find the audience. Where's most of my audience at? Threads has only gone down since they introduced the analytic side of it. So I'm like, okay, well, this is backwards. I want to see it go up. I don't want to see it go down. So I haven't found Threads algorithm or like the special things for Threads. So it is what it is. I'm also not pretty enough for Threads. So, you know, there's that part too. But so first question here, we're going to jump right in. I love jumping right in. I love talking about this kind of question and really just starting off high. So what's a hill that you're willing to die on when it comes to advocating for men and family law, especially regarding issues like DV and narcissistic abuse?
So I believe that men are an underrepresented category as far as domestic violence and narcissistic abuse is concerned. And I've spoken in several men's groups about this, and men traditionally have not had a voice, and they have not been believed in this area of domestic violence and narcissistic abuse. Listen, I grew up with two older brothers. Men don't want to admit that they have been abused by a woman. It's an ego thing. I get that. But I believe that the percentage really these days is 50, where it used to be that women were the ones that were, you know, abused, domestic violence, narcissistic abuse. But I believe that it's right now, it's about 50-50. As you know, I also have a podcast called the Narcissist Abuse Recovery Channel. And my co-host is a man who was actually abused by a narcissist, by a covert narcissist for 28 years. So I have a really soft spot for young men and also men who haven't gotten married yet but are contemplating marriage, and men that are stuck in these abusive relationships. So our firm represents a majority of men in this space.
I love that. And I think it's important too, because you don't really know it until you know it, until you're in it, and until someone points it out to you, and then you start doing some research, and then you look it up, and then you start to understand like kind of where you're at, and you're like, wait, that that sounds a little bit too much, kind of like where I'm at. That sounds a little bit too much where I'm at. And it's because a lot of us men, we just tolerate shit, we just tolerate it. We just kind of take it for exactly what it is. Like the bars the bars are definitely different spots at different spots, right? Like if you hit a woman, touch a woman, do anything to a woman, put hands on her, anything, like it's a finger and you're in jail basically. But the difference on what a woman can do to a man, I can't even go off the screen, top of the screen, bottom of the screen here. Men, women, kind of thing, right? And so men will tolerate a lot more. We'll get hit in the nuts, we'll get slapped, we'll get punched, we'll get kicked, we'll get told we're stupid, we'll get told we're no good, we'll have sex withheld from us, we'll have to go through all these hoops and stuff just to earn our partner's love and whatnot. And trust me, I'm only speaking from experience here. But that's besides the point here. We'll tolerate being cheated on, we'll tolerate all this bullshit that you really shouldn't be tolerating, in the end of it. So I love that. So
And let me just say this, Jade, like if and when we post about this, because we're very active on social media, on Instagram and TikTok,
mhm.
you cannot believe the amount of hate that our law firm receives from women who say, you're just trying to be a pick-me attorney. You're just trying to have
Oh my
men,
god.
and it's so bad that I've had to like go in myself and like block these people. One
Yeah.
time specifically in the beginning of the year, we said something about, men should have 50-50 custody. And this is not for abusive people, right? This is for fathers that
Yeah.
are available, ready, willing to have 50-50 custody. Actually,
Which
this
is which
woman,
is
she
most
wrote,
sad. Which is most
yes, so
sad.
she actually wrote something on our Google review, and I had to go and literally track her down. She was a psychologist in like Pennsylvania,
Oh
and
my.
write a cease and desist letter. Like, this is bad. Like, what I'm telling you is anytime we advocate for men, it doesn't matter what it is. We always get the hate from, and I call it the mom groups, and I put that in quotes.
Yeah.
It's the moms that are like, parental alienation, like we're just trying to, to keep our children because they were abused. We're not talking about that. Anybody in their right mind would say if a parent is abusing a child sexually, physically, that parent should not get visitation. We can agree on that. But we're talking about, and we try to protect and advocate for the fathers that are good fathers that want to be in the lives of their children. And we have these tiger moms, they call them, right? That are just not letting it happen because she's bitter and angry that he left her, right? So
Well,
this is what we're talking about here. And that's why I really, really admire people like yourself that are giving men a voice. Because when I first started 22 years in this practice, men did not have a voice. There were no groups like the ones that you have. There just wasn't. And
mhm.
so now with the advent of social media, people like yourself, people like my co-host that has male victims of female narcissists, they're saying we want to give these male victims a voice.
Yeah. No, and I think it's important. And I love that you mentioned the statistic or mentioned that it's the moms that are coming, right? It's the women that are coming. When, according to recent data that I'm looking up here from Healthy Place, and about when it comes to child abuse and the facts here, women are more frequently reported as perpetrators of child abuse than men, with 53.6% of cases involving female perpetrators. Men account for the remaining percentage of that, but parents as a whole are responsible for over 80% of child abuse incidents, emphasizing that most abuse occurs within family settings. So it's not just dads, it's more so moms. So I think you have to be able to put that in perspective and be able to understand that it's both. And a father may not realize it, or a dad that's in a narcissistic, abusive type of relationship may not understand it. So I want to define this for the listeners here, in case they don't know what narcissistic abuse is. That's my job as a mental health clinician, to make sure that you understand the context there. Because narcissism, narcissist, that's a word that gets thrown around very casually in today's society, in relationships, in dating, shit like that. And it drives me crazy because people don't understand it. Same with bipolar, but that's a whole other topic. And so narcissistic abuse refers to the psychological and emotional manipulation and exploitation by someone with narcissistic traits or narcissistic personality disorder, NPD. This form of abuse often involves patterns of behavior aimed at controlling, dominating, or devaluing the victim. I think that's probably the most common one, the devaluation and the controlling part of it. Dominating, not so much in certain cases, yes, but I feel like it's mostly the devaluating and controlling here. But that's my take, what I've seen. Causing them to feel confused, common, insecure, 100%, or worthless, 100,000%. I can speak to all three of those. It can occur in various types of relationships, including romantic partnerships, friendships, family dynamics, and work environments. So the key tactics of narcissistic abuse may include gaslighting, which of course is another term that's just kind of thrown all over the place, making the victim question their own reality, memory, or perception, manipulation, using lies, guilt, or charm to control the victim's behavior. So that's when I mentioned earlier the using like the controlling sex, withholding love, withholding affection, manipulation, devaluation, constantly criticizing, belittling, or insulting the victim to erode their self-esteem. So making comments about the body, making comments about the work ethic, how they're treating other people, their family relationships, things like that. Our example, silent treatment, withholding communication as a form of punishment or control. Love bombing, overwhelming the victim with affection, attention, and praise at the beginning of the relationship to gain their trust. I also feel like this can also be the opposite, where it's like love exploding, to where it's like you have to love bomb them to win back their affection and their attention and their praise. So you have to ongoingly do that to kind of win it back a little bit. Triangulation, involving others to create jealousy, rivalry, or insecurity, keeping the victim off balance. So involving more people into the situation that need to be involved, whether that's like close friends or things like that. And then they'll say something like, well, why can't I go? Why can't they be included? Why can't they know? You just don't want anyone to know about what I'm going through, what we're going through, and stuff like that. It's like, no, because I want to keep my shit in my house that we can work on, kind of thing. And then projection, the classic projection, accusing the victim of behaviors or flaws that the narcissist is guilty of themselves. And then I think one part of this that's not mentioned is also never, ever, 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 no matter the circumstance, taking responsibility for their actions, admitting that I did wrong, I apologize, me cheating on you was wrong, I shouldn't have done that, me cheating on you twice was wrong, I shouldn't have done that, but versus blaming, I mean, I guess it goes back to gaslighting, manipulation, devaluation, but saying, Padilla, if you and I were married in this situation kind of thing, if we're just talking about this contextually kind of thing, then they'd be like, well, you're telling me that I only cheated on you because you kept bringing up that I was going to cheat on you when I wasn't cheating on you. So then I went and cheated on you because you said I was going to cheat on you. And so then I cheated on you because you made me feel unhappy and devalued and things like that. So I went and did this because I'm tired and I just wanted to, kind of thing. So these are kind of the signs, and I wanted to bring up those statistics and definitions. So yeah.
Right. So what I wanted to say, and we say this on our podcast as well, it's an extreme form of lack of empathy. It's extreme, right? It's like, you have the empaths on one end of the spectrum, and then you have the narcissist on the polar opposite end of the spectrum. And so the narcissist cannot understand. They have a profound lack of empathy for their spouse. And here we're talking about men, right? The men who are the actual victims of narcissistic abuse in the relationship or in the marriage. So you're absolutely right. We go through all of those on the podcast too. And really we want to tell people what this looks like, because a lot of times they hear the word gaslighting and they're like, I don't even know what that means. No offense to men, but they won't go and research that, right? Like they'll just go, okay, I know something happened right now. I don't know what it is, but I need to go and work and provide for my family. Where like a woman will sit there and she'll like actually research that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
And so, and men, it's funny because, not funny, but it's ironic because my co-host, he says, men don't want to say that they were abused by women. So he coined the term. He said something like that they are, I forgot the words that he used actually right now. It just slipped my mind, but he says undeserved cruelty. He said it's actually undeserved cruelty. Like men can get behind that word that it was undeserved cruelty that they were experiencing in the relationship or marriage, but they don't want to say that they're abused. And so like they don't want to admit it because of the, the ego. So
Yeah.
but that's what we always talk about. And you're right, all those characteristics, and we could sit here and talk for hours about each one of those that you just mentioned.
Oh, yeah. Those are all topics within themselves that are deserving of the time and space to deep dive into each of them from both the legal perspective and the mental health perspective and the psychological perspective as well. Which we could both get into those perspectives. But for the time's sake and for ambiguity's sake, please do your research on those topics. There's a lot there. But you mentioned domestic violence, and that's something that we don't get into a lot in society for men, right? And I love that you mentioned that we as men, we don't want to say that we're abused because that ensues weakness, that you're a pussy, that you're not a man, kind of thing. And I'm going to cut it straight because this is a topic that needs to be very much unsugarcoated and needs to be, cut straight. So thank you for, you're the professional here. I'm just the host. But I wanted to jump into some statistics real quick and then get the legal perspective on how prevalent these issues are and what challenges male victims are facing here. So I'm going to go to the statistics and then I want the legal perspective here from you on these. So DV against men is a significant issue, even though it receives like a lot less attention than DV for women. I really want to challenge our listeners here. When was the last time that you heard a man say that he, experienced DV? I want you to think on that for a minute because it's going to take you longer than a minute to think on that. But according to the National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey, the NISVS, approximately 1 in 7 men in the U.S. have experienced severe physical violence from an intimate partner in their lifetime. So 1 in 7. Additionally, nearly 1 in 10 men have faced rape, physical violence, and or stalking by an intimate partner, with the majority of the male victims reporting female perpetrators for these types of abuse. So 1 in 10 in the U.S. and then 1 in 7 for severe physical violence. Statistics from the UK indicate that 1 in 3 victims of DV or domestic abuse, they call it domestic abuse there, are male. So I just want that to sink in. 1 in 3 of domestic abuse in the UK are male. So that only begs the question. It's probably very, very similar in the United States. We just don't talk about it. In England and Wales, recent data found that around 13 men were killed, murdered by a partner or an ex-partner between 2022 and 2023. Despite this, male victims often still face stigma, leading to underreporting. About 21% of male victims did not disclose their abuse to anyone, compared to 18% of females. So, 82% of female victims are disclosing this. No problem. Then there's also psychological aggression, which is also prevalent, with nearly half of men reporting, like you said, experiencing such behavior from a partner, similar to these rates observed in women. So 50-50 is both sides of the coin. Men also face other forms of domestic violence, including, these ones are important. So these ones I would love your perspective on. Financial, emotional, and sexual abuse, with some men being coerced or pressured into non-consensual acts by their partners. Again, it's those times that I mentioned earlier when I was going over the signs and things to look out for. It's those times when, you're just trying to keep things good. So you give it up, you do things that you're maybe not 100% comfortable with, but you don't want to rock the boat at all. So these figures really highlight the importance of, addressing these issues of DV, domestic abuse, for men, and addressing the stigma. So I would love your perspective on that from the legal perspective.
Right. So you're absolutely right in the sense that, and you just confirmed it. So this isn't like you and I are sitting here making this up. These are the statistics, right? Are the national statistics and the ones that you just said from Europe. So we still, to this day in California, where we practice law, don't see a lot of men filing domestic violence. When they come to our office, like I said, we have more males than females. And I see the signs, right? Like I know there's been some domestic violence, she's hit him, she's done this, she's done that. And I'll say to him, like, I'll say to my client, did you ever get a restraining order before? No. Did you ever get a police report before? No. Did you ever go to the doctor? Did you ever go to, but he'll have pictures or he'll have videos. What a great example of this is Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. Remember
Yes.
where she was just poking him and poking him and poking him and antagonizing him, and he just finally had enough, and then she starts videoing. We see that a lot. We see that a lot with men, okay? Where it's called reactive abuse. They're not being the perpetrator, but if you hold a match to a flame, guess what's going to happen eventually? It's good that's going to catch on fire, right?
Mm-hmm.
So men have this reactive abuse, and then the woman will take out her camera or take out her phone and start filming. And I can see that because at Loyola, I'm not only a communications major, but I have a psychology background. So the thing about the most important thing I want to say today to your listeners is do not react. Do not react. You need to figure out what this is and either leave the house, go stay with a relative, a family member, a friend. I've told men before, like, go sleep on someone's couch, because the next thing she's going to do, and here's like the drum roll, is the silver bullet method.
I have a button for that drum roll. I have one.
Go ahead, do it.
I have sound effects. Hold on. All right, silver bullet.
Silver bullet. So that's the next thing she's going to do. And we can talk about that a little bit more. But
yes, please. Silver bullet, please.
It's vitally important, and that you realize that this happens, that this is a strategy of women. And so we're not talking about all women. We're talking about the narcissistic women that are either narcissists or they're sociopaths or they're, antisocial. These are the bucket of women we're talking about. Okay. I'm obviously a woman myself. So we see this strategy, and I've been doing this for 22 years. The silver bullet method is when a woman comes to a family law attorney and says that she was abused either physically, emotionally, mentally, financially, when she really wasn't. Okay. It's false allegations. We're not talking about the women that have the pictures that were physically abused. We're not talking about those women. Okay. So everyone's going to be up in arms that's listening to this and saying, what if she really, we're not, just forget about that for a minute. Because those women obviously.
We're talking about what happened to Trevor Bauer, essentially, with the false allegations. If you need a real life example of this happening, we're talking about Trevor Bauer, not Deshaun Watson. We're talking about Trevor Bauer's case, essentially, because Deshaun Watson still has allegations, Trevor Bauer does not.
Right. So, and what happens is, so there'll be false allegations, and in California where we practice law, it's very easy to get a domestic violence restraining order. In some places, they call it protective order, because the threshold to getting that is very low. Because you can imagine a judge is reading this, right, and going, oh my gosh, she did all these things. Because a judge, a lot of times, Jay, the man doesn't even get notice. So he's not even in court. So the judge will read this stuff and say, oh my gosh, of course I have to protect the wife. I mean, why wouldn't he? He would be ridiculous if he didn't, right? So I'll grant that in California, it's for 3 weeks. So the man doesn't see his child. He doesn't have anything. He can't contact his wife. He can't go to the child's school, nothing. He can't do anything. And then in 3 weeks, if it's not continued, usually the attorney will continue it, right? Because to prolong it, because it's in the best interest of her client to do that. And then go back to court. Let's just say it's in 3 weeks or in a month and a half. And now he has to prove his case and put it through trial. Well, he already has a strike against him. Even if it's proven to be false, he still has a strike against him. Guess why? Because that DV becomes a part of the family law case. Whether it's dismissed or not, it becomes part of that file. So even if the judge changes, I mean, we have judges change all the time, right? Judges change different courtrooms. Judges change, they retire. So that is a part of that court file. And it's a public file in California. Long story short is, what I do with men is, if they have not filed for divorce yet, we do a pre-divorce strategy session where I tell them, you need to leave the house. You need to be very careful. Do not engage with her. She's setting you up. And so many of my clients have come back and said, that's exactly what she was trying to do. I didn't understand that she was trying to bait me, but now I see the signs because somebody spoke about it. So that's the one thing I want your listeners to get, is this is not a joke. We have had, and I've been a witness to this. I've seen men who've committed suicide over this. Because if you get a restraining order, guess what? You could lose your job. I've seen, them commit suicide. I've seen so many really awful things happen to men. So that's why you said the hill that I'm willing to die on this is the hill I'm willing to die on. I want men to know before they file to speak, before they get married, obviously, to listen to people like yourself. That's the first thing. To not marry these types of narcissistic women. But if you're already in it and you didn't know what it was, now you have a name for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and sometimes you don't know going into it, Sometimes you don't know, because it can be very easy to hide those things. Maybe the narcissist doesn't know how narcissistic they are.
Well, that's not true, because the narcissist is manipulative, right? So they know when, and the thing about it is, studies have shown about narcissism that they know what they're doing. So you can't, like, where somebody has, let's say, cancer, and they didn't have anything to do with it, and they have cancer, and now they have to go get treatment, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not the case with narcissism. Narcissism is a mental disorder that they have learned this behavior from some trauma that's happened to them from the ages of 3 to, I say 7, it might be 3 to 9 or 3 to 8 years old. And they're trying to literally get back at their spouse. And all their spouse really wants to do is love them and have a life with them and have children with them. But what the narcissist is doing is continually playing chess, while the innocent spouse is playing checkers. They're not even playing a game. They just want to live their life and have a peaceful life. And, the man wants to go to work and come home and, enjoy his family. And the wife is just sitting there stewing, planning these chess moves. And for the men, I want you to know, these women are usually covert narcissists. So to your point, Jay, he will not know sometimes until it's too late.
Yes. No, and I think that's exactly where I was trying to go with that, and exactly what you said. The man is playing checkers while she's playing chess, right? You're on the same kind of style board, but you're playing one game, and she's doing all these moves up and around you, and all you can do is go one spot forward, or one step back, or one spot to the left and one step to the right, where she can go around you 4 or 5 different times to make these kind of moves. And so it's important to put these things in perspective and to understand the signs. Like I talked about earlier, if you didn't catch those, rewind to them. The gaslighting, the manipulation, the devaluation, the silent treatment, love bombing, triangulation, projection. Those are all the biggest, those are the top 7 signs according to research.
Yeah. Can I just say one thing? I think this kind of sums it up, if I may.
Of course.
If a woman is demasculating you, if she's talking about your looks, your weight, how you can't maybe, you said we can be raw here, how you can't perform in bed, how her ex was so much better than you in bed, all of these things, if she's emasculating you to the point where you don't even feel like a man anymore, that is a sign of a covert narcissist.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. And I'm like thinking about this from my experience and things like that. And so I'm thinking about back to my first marriage, and I'm thinking like even back to the beginning, that first year, I was super young. How old was I? When I got married, like 21 years old to my first wife, and so now I'm thinking about it, and it's like the things that I did when I did have one of those reactions. Like I did some things that I'm not super proud of. I broke a microwave and I broke some dishes and things like that. But if I'm thinking back, it's because I was having reactions to situations. I was poked and poked and poked and poked, and then it just kind of came out. And then I was poked and
Yeah.
poked and poked and poked, and then it came out. And that's how it always was. There was always people being brought in. There was always people being brought in. There was always attempted like witnesses and things like that. There was always things along the way. And there was never that accountability. There's never that part of it where it's like always was my fault in some way, shape, or form. And so thinking back to that, it is exactly what we're saying here.
And the thing is too, like neither you nor I are excusing your behavior in this. Like
Yeah,
you're
100%.
not saying that that was okay. And you have to take responsibility of that. At the same time, something happens to the victims where they have this reactive, that's why it's called reactive abuse. So you put Jay in a different type of relationship, he would never do that. I mean, I've known you just for a short time, Jay, and I can say that about you. You're the most peaceful, honest, great man. You're helping other men get out of bad situations. But you put somebody like him, a peaceful, nice man, gentleman, in that type of relationship. That's what I said. It's that light to the match. It's going to blow up. Because people can only take so much. And this narcissistic abuse is a mental abuse. It's a mental, emotional, physical abuse. Like, yes, of course. And then she's going to take out her camera and be like, look how crazy Jay is. Look, you know what he did last week? He like broke our microwave. And every girlfriend she has is going to be like, oh my God, he's crazy. You need to get a domestic violence on him. Do you see how that cycle perpetuates itself? I have a really, really, really wise mother. Okay. She's over 90 years old. She's an Iranian woman, and she has always told me since I was a little kid, she would say, nobody knows what happens in the marriage except the two people that are living in that house. So never judge because the victim could seem like the perpetrator, like in this example, this microwave example you just gave, but they're not. They're actually the victim. But if she goes and tells her girlfriends or tells her parents, they're going to be like, Jay is crazy. Look at what Jay just did. And you're like, I was just trying to get her to stop.
Yeah.
I was just trying to get her to stop being so cruel to me.
Yeah. And it's hard too, especially for men that are like really young, like I was when I first got married, being 21, like I'm not fully developed. I'm not fully all the way there and things like that. Like I'm still in college and, trying to do all these things and figure out what all this is and what life is now and things like that. There's no playbook or anything for it. And so it's really important to understand that, I'm not excusing my behavior. I wouldn't talk about it if I thought it was okay.
Correct.
Or I wouldn't admit to it if I, didn't want to own up to it. Like I'll own up to it, and it's a continual thing today. The only reason I mentioned that is because just within the last couple of weeks of this conversation, and I don't think she listens to the podcast. She'll fuck herself, but that's just me. But she had brought that up, and I'm like putting that out there now because it's like, okay, that was within our first year of marriage. That was very early on in our marriage and whatnot. And so it's that, kind of thing. And her mother's very similar. So she's trying to get back, and it makes sense, what you're saying, putting it all together here. When you have all the puzzle pieces, and that's really what this is. That's really what we're trying to talk about today, and trying to give you more of those puzzle pieces. And I'm putting these putting these puzzle pieces together. Wow, that's a tongue twister. Putting these puzzle pieces together in real time here, thinking back, looking back, and that was, got 10 years ago, almost at this point. And it's like, holy crap, that's exactly what happened all those different times where I had these reactions because I was poked and prodded, demasculinized, and belittled and gaslit to hell. And, just the match was held up to the fire, and then I explode because I'm an Aries. If we want to pull that card, I'm an Aries. I'm fire. I'm always just straight fire. I've always been my entire life. I've always been very quick triggered. And something I've worked on, something I've gotten better at with time. But when you're young, when you don't have a fully developed frontal cortex, and you're, that match to the fire, shit lights real quick, really quick, especially when that's just how you are, especially when that's how I am as a person. I can fully admit that. I've been that way my whole life. Not having my mother in the picture, not living with my dad till I was in high school, going through a lot of different anger and experiences, things like that. That match is already kind of pre-lit. It doesn't take much to stroke those flames. You blow on it and that fire is big, kind of thing. And so it's, for me, that's me. Everyone's different. But, my situation isn't very different from probably some of the listeners of this podcast where they're like, oh, shit, that's me too. And it doesn't take much. And so now every time when I react, I feel like I'm the bad guy. I'm the one that's in the wrong. When necessarily, yes, you can be in the wrong. It doesn't excuse your action. Like, we don't want to adopt this victim mentality. And that's one thing I noticed too. On the other side of this is that the women will adopt this victim mentality and they will always play the victim until the day that they die, no matter what. They could be divorced and remarried for years and they will still play the fucking victim. And that victim mentality is something that is run rampant in our society.
Yeah, and I have a great example of that too, where I don't talk about this much, Jay, because obviously as a divorce attorney, when clients come to me, I want to talk about their situation. But as you know, on my podcast, I also want to be very raw. So I want to be very raw and give your listeners that same perspective of, why I go so hard. But my current husband went through a narcissistic, abusive marriage for 14 years. And the interesting part about it, because you said victim mentality, our oldest son, who's 25, 2 years ago, actually 2.5 years ago, him and I have a great relationship, obviously, because he's much older, and he sees me more as a friend than like, a mom, obviously, or a stepmom. And he said to me one day, his dad wasn't there. He just, him and I were talking like you and I are talking. And he said, I want to tell you something. And I said, okay. I sat on the couch and I said, what is it? And he said, I think my mom's a narcissist. And you could hear the pin drop, okay? Because we never talk about that ever, right? We never talk bad about his mom, nothing ever, ever. And I said, well, why are you saying that? And he said, he named off the things that you named off. He said, she's gaslighted me since I was a kid. She's always the victim. When she said that victim part, that really stuck with me. And I said, well, what are some of those examples? And he said, to this day, even though my parents have been divorced 10 years, she still blames dad for her life. But they've been divorced 10 years. And he said, I don't understand it. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. And that is exactly it. That is the key. The women always play the victim. Even though they're the perpetrator, they're always playing the victim. Well, I cheated on you because you did this. I did this because you did this. I did this because you did this. To close out that conversation, I told him, you know what, honey, I can neither confirm nor deny this. And I'm not somebody that you're going to sit here and badmouth your mom about. But if you want to go to therapy to discuss this with a professional, we will support that and we will pay for it. And so that's sort of how I handled that situation. Because obviously, as much as I'd love to sit there and commiserate with him and badmouth her because she's made my husband's life miserable, I'm never going to do that, right? Because that's really bad parenting. And so what I want to say to those listeners that have been alienated from their child, that are contemplating suicide because you don't have any relationship with your child, there is hope. And I don't know if the hope is your child will grow up and figure out that your spouse was a narcissist, because Jay, if you're a good parent, you don't want your child to know that, because you don't want them to ever have experienced that abuse from their parent, from their mother. Like,
Yeah, no,
what
100%.
how yeah, how awful of a human being would I be if I'm like, yes, he finally gets it. Like, no, I'm sorry that you had to learn this.
Hmm. Yeah,
I'm
and
sorry that you had to experience this.
I agree. And I think it just goes back to show like kids at some point they will know. They will understand who was who was the fault, who was the perpetrator, who was really the victim. They'll see the reality for themselves, right? And it's not your job as a step parent or a parent to tell them one way or another. The kid will figure it out for themselves majority of the time, unless they're stuck into the same cycles as you were, kind of thing. And then I would
Correct.
say it's your job to intervene as a parent and say, look, we got to talk about this. Because if that was a different conversation, if they were stuck in that still, like your son, your stepson, he was still stuck in those patterns and unable to recognize it. There comes a time and place where him and his father and you have to sit him down and be like, look, this is what she's doing to you. It's
Right.
hard, it sucks, but that's a different scenario. That's a different context here, of course. So
Right. Well, that did happen with our middle son and the youngest. So it did happen with the other two boys. And what we did is we actually intervened with the school therapist. So this was my idea. I said, there's a school therapist, because obviously I'm a divorce attorney, so I know about, all these people. And my husband said, really? There's therapists at the school? And I said, yes. And we got to talking with the therapist at the school, because they're boys, right? They were in high school. They didn't want to go and get a private therapy. And that therapist was able to intervene and call the mom in and talk to the mom, and the principal got involved at one point. I mean, this was a really bad situation,
yeah,
Jay. And their father always said to them, if you ever need therapy at any point, I want you to let me know, because I'm going to pay for therapy, even if it's not covered through insurance. Because sometimes kids, they'll go 3 or 5 times. It's not like they have to go for the rest of their lives. But as it comes up, imagine you've been raised by a narcissistic mother, and your father is no longer in the home to protect you.
yeah,
And so we said, at any time, we always have that, like, if you ever need, and they're like, we know. And they're both the middle one and the youngest are in college. And then our oldest son, who's 25, who I spoke about, he lives in Colorado, and he's got in a great relationship with this girlfriend. He's actually going to come visit us this week. But all that to say that this is why I'm so passionate to help men, because men don't have a voice. And unless women like myself, and I know there's other women that speak up for men, it's never going to be heard. Because Jay, when you speak up for men, they say, oh, of course, he's a man, he's protecting men, blah, 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 blah. But when a woman stands up for men, everybody starts to listen, right? Even if they don't like what they hear, they start to listen to it.
yeah. And I stand up for both sides. I've stood up for both sides on this podcast many times. I've talked to many women. I talked about, birth. I've talked about reproductive health. I've talked about all the different things on this podcast at some point in time. And I've stood up for both sides of the aisle as a man. I'm not just all about the man. I'm not just all about the woman. I'm about what's right, right? And I care about what's right. And I care about the person, the individual being protected, man, male or female.
Correct.
And that's what I care about. So, but considering all this, I know you have some really good tips that I wanted to jump into. So the divorce process is something that's like emotionally very taxing, very draining, especially dealing with a narcissistic partner. So what are some of those advice things that you have for individuals to safeguard their mental health while navigating the legal system, navigating the divorce with a narcissistic partner per se? to help themselves not go absolutely batshit crazy?
Right. So that's a great question. And if you asked me this 22 years ago when I started my practice, I wouldn't know. But because I've done so much research myself on narcissism, and met great people like yourself that are helping others, I would say that if you know you're ready to get a divorce, do not file first. Come to a law firm like ourselves or any law firm, if you're in a different state, any law firm, and just ask for a consultation. You might have to pay a little bit of money, but it's worth it. And say, what do I need to do to protect myself? If you can at all do that, like what documents do I need? What is my, is there a child support obligation? What is that going to look like? Because like I always say, an empath that has researched all this is such a powerful force against a narcissist. And as you know, most narcissists, they're drawn to empaths, right? Because two narcissists don't ever get married. It doesn't last. So make sure you do the pre-divorce strategy session, and get your ducks in a row. If the silver bullet happens and she kicks you out of the house, you obviously don't have that option, right? Because she's going to get the restraining order and file for the divorce. The most important thing is knowledge is powerful against these people. Listen to people like Jay, listen to podcasts, read books. Like I've given my male clients books before and said, go read this. And then I'll sit in court and be like, where's the book? Like we have some downtime, you should be reading. And they're like, are you serious right now? And I'm like, yes. And that's where being a professor in NYU, I'm all about educating my clients. It's vitally important for them to know what this is, because they're not going to always have me, right? They're not going to always have somebody like you championing them. They need to learn what this is and how to handle it, because she's going to send a text. If you have a child with a narcissist, you're stuck with them for life. I mean,
Yeah,
you really
I
are until your
hate for
child's
that one.
18, but then the child gets married, then the child has children, so now you have grandparents, so you need to know what to do not to get triggered. To your point, what do I need to do not to get triggered? And I'll have my clients, they'll say, if you cannot answer the text message or on the parenting app, send it to me first before you respond. Now, Jay, more than ever, there's divorce coaches, there's narcissistic abuse coaches. You can send them the text message and they'll tell you what to send. There's things such as yellow rock and gray rock. More than ever, I think, before in the history of this type of abuse, there's knowledge, and knowledge is powerful against them. And they're going to try to love bomb you again and try to get you back, because that's what happens. They're going to, breadcrumb you along the way and say, let's not get divorced because it's not going their way, right? Get a narc-informed attorney. That's very, very important. A lot of attorneys don't understand narcissistic abuse. They think it's just, oh yeah, well, it's a toxic, that's what I used to say. It's a toxic marriage. No, it's like 50 shades above toxicity. This is like strategic manipulation. The victim has CPTSD. You know what that is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're coming to court and they're telling me, they're like, I'm afraid. Like, imagine grown men, 6 foot tall, is telling me I'm 5'3". I'm afraid. I'm afraid.
Well, no, I get that too. Like I get that too, because it's like I never know, even being multiple years removed from the divorce and everything being in order, like I still don't know what her next move is gonna be. I don't know.
And you won't know.
I don't. And it's like just last week, right? She sends me a text saying she wants to make amendments to a parenting plan. I said, hell no, kind of thing. I said, hell no, I'm not doing that. And then we got into it, and then she's bringing up all the shit from the past, and then she's going into it, and I'm like, look, like just get over it. She's like, why do you want me to get over it? So I don't have to, so you can move on too. It's like, I already moved on. You haven't. Like, get over it. Like,
yeah.
And I'm like,
but
she's like, you just want me to move on, so you don't have to deal with it, kind of thing. It's like, no, I want you to move on for yourself. Honestly,
yeah,
like, move the hell on. But it's like, it is scary. It's like I don't know what her next move is gonna be. I don't know at any given time, like when she's gonna, try to do some dumb shit. To me, dumb shit is her trying to, serve me with papers, try to get the kids full
Yeah.
time, or throw a protection order in there for no reason whatsoever. And she's so back and forth, where it's like one day I want to make parenting plans, I want to make amendments here, and then, the next day it's like, okay, how are the girls doing, kind of thing, and it's like so back and forth and stuff. I'm pretty sure there's some bipolar in there, but who am I to diagnose my ex-wife? Even though I could. But,
Yeah.
it runs in her
No,
family, runs in her mother,
absolutely.
so.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's absolute insanity. And I will tell you that it's heartbreaking for the children. As tough it is for you, Jay, you're a man, I'm a woman. We will get over it. We have other relationships. I'm happily married. My husband's happily married. He will tell you that. People move on, right? Good
Yeah.
people, the empaths, they move on. They learn from this mistake and they move on. They learn from their trauma. The narcissist will always be the narcissist. They're always unhappy. They're always victim blaming someone else. They're not getting along with their neighbors. They're not getting along with their coworkers. Their family members don't get along with these people. And as they age, there's a Harvard study that said as the narcissist ages, they get worse with time. It's a progressive disease like alcoholism. If you do not nip this in the butt, and we know that narcissists don't seek therapy, they only seek therapy in order to make their victim wrong, but not ever to look at themselves. They go, oh yeah, I came to therapy because look how awful my husband is. And the therapist is sitting there going, well, and therapists also don't want to, that's their meal ticket. They also don't want to call them out either. And some narcissists are so good that the therapist doesn't even know, right?
Yeah.
And so they only go to therapy to make the victim wrong. And so the reality is that there's the aging narcissist, right? And, I can say with our situation, their mother is 63 years old, much older than my husband, 63 years old. One of our sons this summer came and saw us from college, and he said, I just want mom to be happy, but she's still blaming people and she's miserable. And that's hurtful to hear. And we just said, look, we're sorry to hear this, and their dad said, look, if she doesn't get help, she's never going to marry somebody that's good because she's broken herself. She's broken. She needs help. She needs therapy. And these are kids that are now in their 20s and they're realizing this. So all that to say that you got to leave the narcissist. I am not a divorce attorney that's telling you to get divorced. I'm a divorce attorney saying I've been through it. I have experienced this myself. I've seen people that I love experience this, and you must get out. You must make a plan to escape a narcissist. You can't leave a narcissist, by the way. You have to escape them. So make a plan to escape.
I love that. And then, of course, take care of yourself along the way. Go to the gym, change your diet, find your outlet, find a creative outlet, find a physical outlet, find an emotional outlet, find a mental outlet, find a spiritual outlet. Fulfill all your outlets that you need. Find a way to fulfill all your outlets. That was the biggest thing for me post-divorce, is that I need to fill my social outlet. I need to fill my creative outlet. I needed to fill my physical outlet. I needed to fill my dietary outlet. I needed to fill my emotional, mental outlet. I needed to fill my spiritual outlet, right? I need to fill all these outlets for myself. I need to plug something into all of them and start refilling those things because they were all drained. Every single part of me was fucking drained. And I was exhausted. After my divorce, I was down so bad. I think within 3 months, I went from 230 pounds, which was the heaviest of my life. I'm 6 foot, 6 foot or so. I was 230. I was wearing like an XL, damn near double XL. And I was so bad. It was so bad. Everything was so drained. I went from 230 to 175 in the span of 3 to 4 months. And I was skinny. I was just bad. It was so bad because I just had, it was done. We were separated and I was just, everything was just exhausted, just so exhausted. That was probably the most I ever drank in my life and most I went to bars and everything like that. And it was crazy. It was not good. It was not healthy, but I was just exhausted. I didn't have anything left. And so now my body finally has the time to reset itself, and then it literally drained itself of everything. So,
can I just say one thing that's really important, because you told me how can we help men?
Mm-hmm.
If you are contemplating marriage with someone, you know what a great strategy is, Jay?
What's that?
Tell them you want a prenup. That will
Okay.
reveal a lot if you tell a woman you want a prenup. You know why?
I don't.
If she says, if she fights with you, if she says, I don't want a prenup, why do we need a prenup? Even if you don't get one, see her reaction to that statement. I think we should get a prenup, because these narcissistic women are never going to sign a prenup, because narcissistic women are after your money, they're after your mental health, emotional health. They will never sign a document that has a prenup in it. Think about that, right? If you say that's like a game changing, like a checkmate strategy. If you say, you know what, I was thinking, maybe we should get a prenup. If she says, I will sign any document you put in front of me because I want to marry you and I'm in love with you, that is something a narcissistic woman will never say. She'll make every excuse under the book and break up with you. And I just thought of that, by the way. This is like a God moment. But think about that. What do you think about that strategy?
I think that's check and mate. Padita. I think that's
Checkmate.
something that, yeah, I think it's check and mate, and the game over, kind
Game
of
over.
thing. I think that's, exactly. My last question here was going to be, ask you, what advice would you offer? And I think that's a great place to leave this here.
Yeah.
Ask her if she can honestly say, she can look you dead in the face and say, I will sign literally anything because I want to marry you, the person for you, no matter what you have right now or what you will have in 25 years, or no matter where we're at down the line. It doesn't matter. Anyways, because I want you, kind of thing, versus a narcissist who, you're right, will never sign those things because she's out to get
Never.
something from the very beginning, because she's playing chess from the very beginning.
Yes.
And of course, I think there's always going to be kind of that knee-jerk reaction just humanly, but if she's
But
reasonable and she's not having those, symptoms of being a narcissist and, abusing with narcissistic abuse, then,
yeah.
That knee-jerk reaction will get over pretty quick, and the logic will sit in and things like that. It's like, oh, I don't really have a problem with it. Like, I'm fine with it. Like, can you explain more of, like, your reasoning behind it? She's reasonable, wants to have a legit conversation, then
Yes.
that's good. That's where you should go. It should be a conversation, kind of things like that. Okay,
Yes.
what do we both want out of it? What do you want out of this? What do I want out of it? Kind of thing. This is just to protect us. We're never going to need this kind of thing, baby, but, we're going to be fine. I just want it, just to have it, kind of thing. But she's fighting you,
Just have the
refusing. So,
conversation.
100%.
Yeah,
So,
just have the conversation. I think having that conversation is vitally important, because finances is the number one reason why couples get divorced. The second is communication. They cannot communicate. And if you can talk about finances from the beginning, I think it's important. But we're talking about narcissism here. And I also want to say to men, and like I said before, I was raised by two older brothers. Listen to your family. Listen to your family. I feel like men sometimes, and I'm just generalizing, they don't listen to their mom and dad. Maybe you don't, or maybe you're estranged from your parents. Listen to your siblings, listen to your family members, bring them around, let them, I just have posted a video this morning. You need to get to know someone at least 4 seasons, which is 1 year. Really, my preference is 3 to 5 years. I dated my husband for 3 years before we got married. So I did this myself. You need time to get to know the person. Do not rush the courting phase. I know sometimes women will make you, they'll be like, okay, well, if in 6 months we're not, you don't want that girl. You don't want a woman that is going to pressure you into marriage, because if she pressures you into marriage, she's going to pressure you into having a child, pressure you into vacations, pressure. That's not, I'm a divorce attorney. I can tell you the type of marriages that don't work. Those marriages do not work because it's one-sided. And so take your time, give it 2, 3, 4 years. If you want something to last a lifetime, why would you rush it? It doesn't make sense. And
100%.
so here's the thing, Jay. and you maybe don't know this about me because you're my friend, but I am the most romantic person you probably will ever meet in your lifetime. I'm the type of person that my husband brings me flowers every week. Like, that's how romantic, like, I love chocolates and all the stuff, right? Even though I'm a divorce attorney. But you have to know what you're getting yourself into. Look at it maybe from a male's perspective, a business relationship. Because when you divorce her, it's going to be business. Your property is going to be 50-50. Your business is going to be 50-50. Your cars, you're going to have to split, whatever. So look at it like this. Like, is this somebody I would get into a business relationship with? No, because they're maybe too emotional. They're pushy. They're a bully. All the things. You're like, I wouldn't. So why would you marry them?
Yeah. No, all those are fair points. I think that's a great perspective to take on this, is to, if you wouldn't do business with them, because part of marriage is that business part of it. You have to be able to do business with them. You have to be able to have a long-term sustaining relationship in all these different aspects. I think that's a great way to think about it. Great perspective there as well. And I love that perspective. It's something really important to think about. So.
I think you also wanted to talk about my mental health.
Oh, no, not yours.
Like, how do I deal with these really like high conflict type of divorces, right? Because narcissistic divorces, they tend to take longer in California. You have to be separated at least 6 months in order to, file and be divorced. It's a 6-month waiting period. And narcissistic abuse divorces take 3 to 5 years. The longest I've seen is 12 years. That's a long time to be
really long
in
time.
court. And so
that's exhausting.
Yes. So as a divorce attorney, like, how I protect my mental health is I don't have a battle inside my house. I have a great husband. Recently I've taken on learning horseback riding. I like English style horseback riding. So I do that on the weekends. Go to the gym, go hiking with my girlfriends. I come home and it's peaceful and quiet, and I get to devote so much time to my clients. And it's just, I fight for the underdog, and I get to sleep well at night knowing that at the end of the day, I'm protecting my client, I'm protecting their child or their children. Our law firm is very child focused, because I know what happens when the mom gets eventually remarried, the dad gets eventually remarried, but the child is the one that's kind of stuck with the decisions that they're making through the divorce. Mm-hmm. But, I'm really blessed that I get to do what I do and help, I say victims to survivors. I get to help the victims and I get to see them become survivors. And there's no bigger gift than that.
That's incredible. Well, Perdita, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming on the podcast. Where can the people follow you on social media, find you, all those fun things?
So social media is Jafari Legal for TikTok, Instagram, Threads, the way we met. And then the podcast it's a brand new podcast, came out last month, is called the Narcissist Abuse Recovery Channel. And we are just setting up a website for it, but the Instagram is narc.podcast. There's some information on there. Again, obviously, people that are following you, my co-host is Male Victims of Female Narcissists. I think I did do an introduction for you as well, to have him possibly be a guest on your show. Obviously there's synergies there. He helps a lot of men. He does, coaching and all of that stuff, because really, Jay, we are really helping people. I mean, it's a great feeling, because we went from being victims to survivors to helpers. And I really commend you also for everything you do and how selfless you are with putting your, like, we're taping this on a Saturday. I usually don't work on the weekends, by the way, but
which I appreciate, which I really do appreciate.
Which, when you said, I said, you know what? even if this helps one person, Jay, then you've done your job. And we know it's going to help more than one person. But even if it helps one man realize that he's not alone and there's people that are advocating for him, you've done your job and I've done my job. So thank you again.
100%. I couldn't agree with that more. Well, Padita, again, thank you for your time. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in today. I hope you got something out of this conversation. If you're that one person and you need to reach out because you feel like you're stuck in this cycle, reach out to me on Instagram at YoungDadPod, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, wherever you want to reach out to. You can reach out to me at YoungDadPod. You can reach out to Padita as well and the team over at Jafari Legal as well. And you can find different resources, find people to get connected to. You can even drop it in the comments and we'll reach out to you. If you need to be anonymous and reach out to us, that's fine too. Find a way, we'll make it happen. Make a new email address and just email us and we'll have a conversation with you too. However you need to do it, please do it. Please reach out. Know that you're not alone. Know that, there are people who have gone through this, that have experienced it. Both of us are just talking about our different experiences as well with it. And so just remember that. And then while you're doing all those things, make sure you like, follow, subscribe, leave a review, leave 5 stars, all those things that you do to support your favorite podcast. And then also please go check out the Narcissistic Abuse Recovery channel as well. It's a really good podcast. It's really fun. I've listened to all the episodes so far. And it's a really, really great project what you guys got going on over there. Really good podcast, a lot of great information. John needs to return my freaking email. So John, if you're listening to this, return my freaking email. I'm waiting for him. But
actually, this morning I told him, I said, "Hey, I'm going to be on with Jay. You need to." He has his day job, right? He's got his day job, and then he does this to help men, obviously. And 100%. So I was like, and I usually don't text him on the weekend, but I was like, "Hey, I'm on with Jay today." Definitely. So I know that that's going to be powerful for your listeners because 2 men that have gone through this and have not only been victims but survivors, it's like such a powerful thing.
Agreed. And it's funny, I only mentioned that because I saw, how Google gives you like a follow-up email, say, hey, follow up with this person today. His was right at the top today when I checked my emails. I was like, that's funny. So it all just worked out. But anyways, to our listeners, to everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for listening to the Young Dad Podcast. I'm your host, Jay, Padita Jafari, family attorney. Reach out to us, follow us on socials, all the things, and we'll catch you next time right here on the Young Dad Podcast.